Steven Seagal, part-time actor,
I'm gonna take you to the bank, Senator Trent. To the blood bank.
part-time musician,
If I were to say that now I have everything.
part-time lawman,
Got my gun and I went doom 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 doom. I shot and somebody said, "Man, I think he missed the whole target." And then somebody else said, "Hell no, he hit all the bad guys in the eye."
Yes, guys, that is right. Today, I am going to be talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Steven Seagal. Now, if you're like me, you probably know him from his god-awful straight-to-DVD movies that he's been putting out for the past, 25 years.
I feel like I'm talking to a retarded child.
But there was a time when Mr. Steven Seagal was a huge figure in Hollywood, and he's not the only aging action star guilty of doing this. I mean, Bruce Willis is definitely a big culprit, but even Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger have done their fair share of these god-awful straight-to-DVD movies over the years. But out of all those guys, Steven Seagal is definitely the most interesting for pretty obvious reasons.
Listen, man, you're gonna get a silver star out of this when it's all over. And you have all the girlfriends you want.
I've been fascinated with him as a person for a while now, but I wasn't really familiar with his earlier work. I'd seen Under Siege a couple of times, which is his fifth film, and from my understanding, that appears to be the last really good movie he made before the drop-off happened. But before that, he had done 4 movies, and I virtually knew nothing about them, so I decided to sit down with my dad and watch Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, and Out for Justice, all in one single day for your entertainment. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. I went in order of release, so I started out with his first film, Above the Law, which was released in 1988, and it follows him as a Chicago cop named Nico Tescani, who's making sure no one is above the law. Now, right off the bat, it's clear this guy likes violence. I mean, he breaks people's limbs. That's kind of his trademark move. But he really has no remorse about killing anyone, which you'll come to see is pretty common throughout his movies. With this being his first film, though, you can definitely see the making of an action star here. Seagal is not the most athletic or the buffest guy, but he has a certain charm to him, and he's intimidating enough in the action scenes. One factor that plays into him in the action scenes, and probably part of the reason why he, got as big as he was, is because he's a black belt in Aikido, which is essentially a form of martial arts, which involves using people's momentum against them. So that was really unlike anything audiences had seen at the time, and it really made him stand out from a lot of other action stars and action movies that were coming out during the late 80s. And the cast is pretty good. I like Pam Grier a lot as his sidekick Jax. In fact, I thought he had better chemistry with Jax than he did with Sharon Stone, who played his wife. They should have ended up together by the end, but hey, what are you gonna do? Steven Seagal is also pretty good. He's not really as weird here, and his presence isn't as big. As the films go on, he slowly starts to reveal his personality more and more. But here, he's kind of, pulled back a little bit. Really, my biggest complaint with this movie is the story. I mean, it's just way too convoluted. It should be really straightforward, because it's a story that's been done countless times. There's corrupt police, senators, blah, 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 and Steven Seagal, Nico, has to, fight them. And that does happen in the movie, but they throw in a different layer of a Vietnam subplot that comes back into play later on. It doesn't really all line up, and by the end, it feels a little bit underwhelming. It can also feel very outdated at times. Granted, it is a film that came out in the late 80s, and you can't change it, but there are a lot of action films from the late 80s and early 90s, and that time period that feel timeless, and this, you can definitely feel the age on it. All in all, though, it's good enough. It's not a horrible film, but I was a bit worried about this Steven Seagal binge. Luckily, the next film is a lot better. Up next was Hard to Kill, which was released in 1990, and more or less, this is kind of just the same thing as Above the Law. You have corrupt senators, policemen, the mob, whatever, and Steven Seagal, now named Mason Storm, has to navigate this craziness. If you thought Above the Law was convoluted, you could argue that Hard to Kill's story is almost too simplistic. Still, though, it's a really fun time. It's really entertaining. In fact, at times, it leans into so bad it's good territory.
That's for my wife. Fuck you and die.
but there's enough stuff going on that I really appreciate. For instance, the action here is even better. There's some cool martial arts scenes throughout, and there's a great chase scene towards the end of the movie. With this film, though, it's clear that Steven Seagal is now the star of the show, and I'm not exactly sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. There are a lot of Chinese cultural elements mixed in here, and I have a sneaking suspicion, just sneaking, that he had something to do with it. All in all, though, I enjoyed Hard to Kill. It's definitely a step up from Above the Law. It's a really fun time, and it serves as a good time capsule of what action movies looked like in the early 90s. Up next on the Steven Seagal train is Marked for Death, and this movie is awesome. The basic plot, again, it's a similar story. You have Steven Seagal, now called Johnny Hatcher, who's basically this cop, he's off doing foreign affairs, whatever, but he's a bit burnt out, so he decides to go back to his hometown. He reunites with his childhood friend, played by Keith David, who I liked quite a bit in the movie. And then he discovers that crack-dealing Jamaicans have taken over, and he just can't stand for this. And from there, he's going to take back his town. And I honestly love this movie so much. The leader of the Jamaicans is Screwface. He's this terrifying green-eyed man who's full of a lot of strange remarks throughout the movie.
Man commit a crime against you. He must be paid back 1,000 times. A what? Hatcher dead. I want his family dead. And if you can't kill him, I go kill him. And then I go kill you. You was conceived in darkness, and I gonna deliver you into the light.
But he's great. I mean, throughout the movie, he refers to Steven Seagal, Johnny Hatcher, as White Boy Hatcher. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. The action is even better if that's possible. This is definitely the most violent of all his movies. And yeah, Keith David also stars in the film as his friend who helps him fight off the Jamaicans. And I liked him a lot in this movie. Steven Seagal is at his peak weirdness here. He's wearing a lot of strange outfits throughout the movie. At one point, he wears an earring, but they kind of dropped that earlier off in the movie. But he sort of balances out his weirdness really well, and the two have good enough chemistry that they can carry the movie together.
Well?
One thought he was invincible, the other thought he could fly.
So?
They were both wrong.
Marked for Death is just everything you want in a Steven Seagal movie. It's so stupid, but so much fun at the same time. There's so many memorable lines. Again, the action is great. I love the setting, especially for the third act. I mean, they go to Jamaica at one point in the movie. By the way, don't know how they got the guns on the plane to go to Jamaica. But anyways, they go to Jamaica, and it's awesome. It's great to see, it's a whole new world, and they do a really good job exploring the Jamaican culture and elements within that. Out of all the ones I watched, this is the one I would recommend the most, and I can see myself rewatching this countless times.
Steven Seagal, out for justice.
I wrapped up my Steven Seagal binge with his fourth film, Out for Justice, which was released in 1991. And in this one, he plays a detective named Gino Felino. Yes, that is his name. While he's trying to avenge the death of his friend over the course of one night. And that's probably the aspect I like most about this movie. It feels the most different of the four. While the first three movies, they're all kind of the exact same thing, there are elements in each of them that make them stand out amongst the rest. And if they had done a similar story for Out for Justice, I would have been slightly disappointed. But with the storytelling that they're using in this and the plot beats that they're going through, it makes this film feel a lot more unique in its filmography. It's essentially New York's version of Training Day. I love Training Day, and I actually ended up loving this movie. Technically speaking, it's Seagal's best acted and just most well-made movie. There's some great action scenes in here. There's an incredible chase scene towards the beginning of the movie. But the focus of the movie isn't necessarily on the action. It's more of a gritty crime drama than it is an action movie. Steven Seagal, it probably is his best performance, but he is playing it up a bit too much, especially with the Italian accent.
That way, you know why? Because, you and I, we don't know each other so good. You were still sucking your thumb when your brother was around town sucking dick.
This movie has the charm of his previous three movies, you know, the low budget, low brow, almost B movie level charm that those movies had. But at the same time, Out for Justice is trying to do something, you know, bigger. It has a lot more depth than the previous three movies, and it explores a lot of themes that the other movies don't even address. Out for Justice is just a really well-made crime drama, and it also just serves as a great way of showing, you know, New York in the early 90s and the cinema around it. If I were to rank the four films, I would have to say Marked for Death is my personal favorite, just because, one, it's so quotable, there's so many lines that are just going to be engraved in my brain for the rest of my life, but also it's kind of everything you want in a Steven Seagal movie. It's stupid, it's got cool action, it's got a great villain in Screwface, and yeah, a really good supporting cast as well, and I recommend that one the most out of all of them. Second place is gonna go to Out for Justice. Technically speaking, his most well-made movie, but if you're looking for a good crime drama, this is definitely one that you should check out. Coming in at third place is going to be Hard to Kill. It's a pretty standard Seagal film. It's fun, it's got cool action, it's got some weird elements to it, some, you know, very strange elements to it, in fact, but I enjoyed it for what it was. And last place is gonna go to Above the Law. I really don't have anything against this film. It just feels the most standard to me, if that makes any sense. In the end, I was surprised with how much I enjoyed these movies. Well, all four of them, again, kind of feel like they're part of the same series, and Steven Seagal, you know, is kind of the same character in all of them. There are distinguishing features in each of them that definitely make them stand out, and I appreciated that because it made this binge a lot more interesting. There's something about these movies that I really connected with. I don't know what it is. Steven Seagal, he works well as sort of an everyday guy in these movies. But in general, I feel like he really never should have been famous. As I watched the movies, I saw a very clear evolution. Not just physically, you know, the whole hairline thing was incredible. It's cool how it, you know, reversed. Usually people's hairline would go back. His did the opposite, which was pretty cool to see. But at the same time, you can kind of see his cockiness go up as the movies go along. By the time Out for Justice came out, he's wearing like berets in the movie and tank tops. You know, he is confident in himself, but also at the same time that may have led to his own detriment. I would definitely be open to exploring more of Steven Seagal's filmography in the future. I mean, he's done a ton of films, so I think it'd be really interesting just to go through his entire filmography and break it down. So if you would like to see a part 2 to this video, definitely drop a like. Anyways, if you enjoyed it, as always, make sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications, and again, you know, drop a like. It's greatly appreciated. Anyways, guys, this is Shai signing off. Peace out.